This happened 2 years ago when I was working loss prevention at a Walmart in Ohio. I'm sharing this because I still can't make sense of what I saw, and maybe someone else has experienced something similar. Part of my job was reviewing security footage for theft investigations. Nothing exciting, mostly people pocketing small items or switching price tags. But in December 2022, I started noticing something strange on the overnight cameras. There was this woman who came in every night around 2 a.m. She'd enter through the main doors, walk straight to aisle 12, the pharmacy section, and stand there for exactly 17 minutes. She never touched anything, never spoke to anyone, just stood perfectly still, staring at the cold medicine shelves. At first, I thought maybe she was confused or had some kind of condition. But she did this every single night for 3 weeks. Same time, same aisle, same duration. The overnight staff said they'd never seen her, which was weird because she was clearly visible on camera. I decided to stay late one night to see her in person. I positioned myself where I could watch aisle 12 directly while monitoring the cameras. At 2:03 a.m., the camera showed her walking into the aisle, but when I looked with my own eyes, the aisle was empty. I thought the camera was malfunctioning, but when I checked the timestamp, it was recording in real time. The woman was there on camera, standing motionless, while the actual aisle remained completely vacant. I called my supervisor over. He looked at the monitor, then at the aisle, then back at the monitor. "That's impossible," he said. "Cameras don't lie." But they weren't lying. They were showing something that wasn't physically there. I started having trouble sleeping. Every night, I'd come home and replay the footage in my head. The woman's posture was so rigid, so unnatural. She never swayed, never shifted her weight, never even blinked. She just stood there like a mannequin, but somehow more unsettling than any store display. My wife noticed I was distracted. She'd ask me about work, and I'd find myself starting to tell her about the woman on the cameras, then stopping. How do you explain something like that without sounding crazy? So I just said work was stressful and left it at that. But the stress was getting worse. I started taking screenshots of the footage, printing them out, comparing them side by side. In every image, the woman was identical. Same pose, same expression, same angle. It was like someone had inserted a single frame into the security system and it was playing on repeat. The breakthrough came when I decided to check the camera's technical specifications. I discovered something that made my hands shake as I read the manual. Our security system automatically deletes footage older than 90 days to save storage space. But the woman had been appearing for over 6 months. Somehow this impossible footage was regenerating itself, bypassing the system's automatic deletion protocols. Every night, the cameras would create new recordings of something that had never actually happened. I started documenting everything. Every night, I'd take photos of the empty aisle, while the cameras recorded her presence. The images never matched. Camera footage showed a woman in a blue coat. My photos showed nothing. After 2 weeks of this, I decided to research the store's history. I found out that in 2019, a woman named Patricia Morse had collapsed in aisle 12 and died of a heart attack. The description matched: blue coat, elderly, thin build. But here's the part that still gives me chills. When I looked up Patricia's medical records, I had access through the incident report. I found out she'd been coming to that Walmart every night for months before her death. always around 2 a.m., always buying the same cold medicine for her sick husband. She died on December 15th, 2019. The camera footage of the mystery woman started appearing on December 15th, 2022, exactly 3 years later. I never reported this to corporate. Who would believe it? But I kept the footage, and I still have it. Sometimes I watch it late at night, trying to understand what I witnessed. The woman stopped appearing after New Year's, but last month I heard from a friend who still works there that the cameras have started recording someone new. A man in a red flannel shirt standing in aisle 7 every Tuesday at 3:15 a.m. I looked it up. A customer named Robert Chen died in aisle 7 on a Tuesday in March 2021. Heart attack, just like Patricia. The cameras started recording him on March 15th, 2024, exactly 3 years later. I don't work there anymore, but I still drive by sometimes. I wonder how many people have died in that store over the years, and how many of them are still showing up on camera, visible to the security system but invisible to the human eye. The store keeps running, people keep shopping, and the cameras keep recording things that shouldn't exist. I need to tell someone about what happened to me last month. I keep thinking about it, and I'm starting to worry I might be losing my mind. I was driving home from work around 11 p.m. when my car started making a weird noise. Steam was coming from under the hood, and the temperature gauge was redlining. I pulled into the first parking lot I saw, a 24-hour Walmart. The lot was mostly empty, except for employee cars clustered near the building. I parked far from the entrance, popped the hood, and tried to figure out what was wrong. I'm not much of a mechanic, but it looked like a coolant leak. I called my roadside assistance, but they said it would be at least 2 hours. Great. I decided to go inside and wait where it was warm. When I came back out around 1:30 a.m., there was another car parked next to mine. A beat-up Honda Civic with tinted windows. Nobody was around, which struck me as odd, because why would someone park way out here when there were closer spots available? I got in my car to wait for the tow truck and tried to see through the Honda's windows. They were so dark I couldn't make out anything inside, but I had this feeling, this uncomfortable sense that someone was watching me. At 2:15 a.m., the tow truck still hadn't arrived. I called again, and they said the driver was running late. I looked over at the Honda. It hadn't moved, and I still couldn't see anyone inside. That's when I noticed something that made my stomach drop. There were no keys in the ignition. The car was running. I could hear the engine and see exhaust, but there were no keys visible anywhere. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe it was a push-button start, or maybe the keys were just hidden from view. But the feeling of being watched was getting stronger. I decided to walk around the car, just to satisfy my curiosity. As I got closer, I realized the windows weren't just tinted. They were completely black. Not tinted glass, but like someone had painted them from the inside. I knocked on the driver's window. No response. I knocked harder. Nothing. The engine was definitely running, but there was no one inside. At least, no one I could see. I went back to my car and called the police. I know it sounds crazy, but something felt very wrong about the situation. The dispatcher said they'd send someone out to check. While I waited, I decided to document everything. I took photos of the Honda with my phone, making sure to capture the license plate and the strange painted windows. But when I looked at the photos, my phone showed only empty parking spaces. Every single picture was of vacant asphalt. This was impossible. I was looking directly at the car while taking the photos. I could see it clearly with my own eyes, but my phone's camera wasn't registering it at all. I took dozens of pictures from different angles, but they all showed the same thing: nothing. I started to wonder if I was having some kind of breakdown. The stress from work had been building, and maybe the car trouble had pushed me over the edge. But I could still see the Honda sitting there, engine running, exhaust visible in the cold air. I tried calling my wife, but it went straight to voicemail. I called my brother, same thing. It was like the universe was conspiring to make me doubt my own sanity. Then I noticed something that made everything worse. The Honda wasn't just idling, it was moving. Not driving away, but shifting slightly, like someone was inside adjusting the position. The steering wheel was turning back and forth, just a few degrees each way, but there was still no one in the driver's seat. I realized I was witnessing something that defied every logical explanation I could think of. While I waited, I kept watching the Honda. At exactly 2:45 a.m., the engine stopped. The car went completely silent. Then, without any warning, all 4 doors opened at once. Nobody got out. The doors just opened simultaneously and stayed open. I could see inside now. The interior was completely gutted. No seats, no dashboard, no steering wheel. Just an empty shell. But the car had been running. I'd heard the engine, seen the exhaust. How do you run a car with no engine? The police arrived 20 minutes later. I told them about the Honda, about the doors opening, about the missing interior. They looked at me like I was drunk or high. "Sir, what Honda?" the officer asked. I pointed to where it had been parked. The space was empty. "There's been no other car here," the officer said. "We've been patrolling this lot all night. You're the only person we've seen." I insisted there had been a car, that I'd seen it, heard it running. The officer checked the security cameras with the store manager. According to the footage, my car had been alone in that section of the lot all night. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. The tow truck finally arrived around 3:30 a.m. As we were loading my car, the driver mentioned something that made my blood freeze. "You know, this is the 3rd breakdown I've been called to in this exact spot this month," he said. "Always around 2 a.m. Always someone complaining about a phantom car parked next to them." He looked at me seriously. "You didn't see a black Honda, did you?" I nodded. "Yeah, you're not the first. Story's always the same. Engine running, no driver, doors opening by themselves, but the cameras never show anything." He finished securing my car and shook his head. "I've been doing this job for 15 years. Some parking lots just have problems. This one's definitely got problems. I never found out what was wrong with that spot, or why multiple people have seen the same impossible car. But I take a different route home from work now. I don't want to break down in that parking lot again." I worked at Walmart for 6 months in 2023. I quit without notice, and I've never told anyone why until now. But I think people should know what's in the employee manual that they don't give to regular workers. It started during my 2nd week. I was working overnight stock, and my supervisor, Marcus, pulled me aside after a particularly quiet shift. "You're doing good work," he said. "Corporate's been watching, and they want to give you additional responsibilities." He handed me a thin binder with Employee Manual Level 2 printed on the cover. It looked official. Same Walmart logo, same corporate formatting as the regular handbook. "Don't take this home," Marcus said. "Don't show it to other employees. Read it here, follow the procedures, and don't ask questions." I thought it was some kind of management training material. Special protocols for senior employees, maybe loss prevention procedures. I was actually excited to be trusted with additional responsibilities. The manual was about 30 pages long. The first section looked normal. Policies for handling damaged merchandise, procedures for inventory discrepancies, guidelines for customer complaints, standard corporate stuff. But Section 4 was different. It was titled Anomalous Incident Response. According to the manual, certain Walmart locations experience operational irregularities that require specific protocols. The manual listed various scenarios, merchandise appearing in aisles overnight with no record of delivery, customers purchasing items that don't exist in the system, security cameras recording areas of the store that don't exist, employees reporting shifts they never worked, temperature fluctuations in specific zones without mechanical cause. Each scenario had a detailed response protocol. Don't investigate, don't document, don't discuss with other employees. Simply follow the corrective procedures and file a Level 2 incident report. I thought it was some kind of training exercise or corporate joke. But over the next few weeks, I started noticing things. There was aisle 23 in the grocery section. I walked through it dozens of times, stocking shelves, helping customers. But when I looked at the store map, there was no aisle 23. The grocery section only went to aisle 22. I mentioned it to Marcus, and he just nodded and told me to file a Level 2 report. Then there was the customer who bought $200 worth of groceries every Tuesday at 3 a.m. Always the same items, always paid in cash, always polite. But when I looked him up in the system one night, there was no record of any of his purchases. The register showed the transactions, but the inventory system showed no corresponding sales. Level 2 report. The breaking point came in my 5th month. I was working alone in electronics when I heard music coming from the toy section. Not the usual background music. This was children's laughter and carnival music, like from a toy that plays sounds when you press a button. I walked over to investigate. The music was coming from aisle 19, but when I got there, all the toys were silent. No batteries, no power sources, nothing that could make music, but I could still hear it, faint but clear. Children laughing, carousel music, the kind of sounds that make you think of old-fashioned toys. I followed the sound to a specific shelf. There, between a stuffed elephant and a toy truck, was a music box I'd never seen before. It was old-fashioned, with a little ballerina that spun when you opened the lid. The music was coming from this box. I picked it up to examine it. There was no price tag, no barcode, no manufacturer's label. Just a small engraving on the bottom. For Sarah, 1987. I opened the manual and found the protocol for unregistered merchandise. According to the procedures, I was supposed to place the item in a special containment area in the back room and file a Level 2 report. But something about the music box bothered me. The engraving seemed personal, like it belonged to someone specific. I decided to ask Marcus about it. "Where did you find this?" he asked when I brought it to him. I told him about the music, about following the sound to the shelf. Marcus looked tired. "How long have you been working here?" "Almost 6 months." "And you've been following the level 2 protocols?" I nodded. "Then you know you're not supposed to ask questions about anomalous incidents." "But this feels different, like it belongs to someone." Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said something that made me realize I was in over my head. "It does belong to someone. Sarah Martinez. She worked here from 1985 to 1987. The music box was a gift from her daughter for her birthday." "Where is she now?" "She died in 1987. Heart attack. Right there in aisle 19. The music box disappeared from her locker after the funeral." I stared at him. "So how is it on the shelf?" "That's not the right question," Marcus said. "The right question is, how many other items in this store belong to people who used to work here?" He led me to a storage room I'd never seen before, behind the employee break room. Inside were dozens of shelves filled with random objects, photographs, jewelry, books, toys, clothing. All of it looked personal, like things you'd find in someone's bedroom or locker. "Every item in here appeared on the sales floor over the past 5 years," Marcus explained. "We collect them, catalog them, and store them here. Corporate calls it residual inventory, but I call it what it is, a graveyard of memories." I picked up a frame photo from one of the shelves. It showed a middle-aged man with 2 young children, all of them smiling at a birthday party. The frame was inscribed, "World's Best Dad, 1998. "David Chen," Marcus said, noticing me looking at the photo. "Worked in automotive for 12 years. Died of a stroke in 2019. His photo showed up in the picture frame section 3 weeks later." I walked through the room, looking at the collected items. There were hundreds of them. Personal belongings from employees who had died, somehow finding their way back to the store where they'd spent their working lives. "Why doesn't corporate shut this down?" I asked. Marcus laughed bitterly. "Because it's not just happening here. It's happening at dozens of locations across the country. They've got whole teams dedicated to managing this phenomenon. The level 2 manual you read, that's just a basic protocol. There are level 3 and level 4 manuals for stores where things get really strange." I realized I was just seeing the tip of an iceberg that went much deeper than I'd ever imagined. I quit the next day. I couldn't handle the idea that the store was somehow collecting pieces of its former employees, keeping their belongings on shelves like merchandise. But sometimes, late at night, I wonder what will happen to my things when I die. Will they show up on a shelf somewhere, waiting for another employee to find them and file a level 2 report? The manual is probably still in that back office, waiting for the next person needs to know the truth about what really happens in some Walmart stores. I just hope they're smarter than I was and quit before they find their own belongings on the shelves.